Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello. We are cozying up to Unsolved Case Files today. It's a wintry time. I mean, California is California, but we have our version of cozy time.
It's chilly here.
What's that?
It's been a little chilly here.
So there you go. But today on the show, we are going to talk about an unsolved case, and Kathy's going to take it away with her case.
Okay, I'll do that now.
Oh, all right.
So I picked this case not only for just incredibly how gruesome it was, but also like how badly the cops were either negligent or corrupt.
Oh, no.
And so there's a little bit of like how did this go so wrong?
How did this happen, fellas?
How did they ignore this evidence? So the case is called the Keddie murders, the Keddie family, Keddie, if you want to look it up.
Okay, I will.
So this case took place in 1979. In July 1979, Glenna Susan, or as they called her, Sue Sharp, was in Springfield, Massachusetts, along with her 5 children. She had just left her home in Connecticut after separating from her husband, James Sharp. So they relocated to Northern California, where Sue's brother, Don, lived. And upon arriving there in California, she had rented a small trailer formerly occupied by her brother at the Claremont Trailer Village in a town called Quincy. So Sue's ex-husband was in the military, and when they divorced and the Navy gave her all of $250 a month to start her new life, she started to have to work a part-time job at the Quincy Elks Lodge. And with the little money she brought in, she rented the Keddie cabin. So I'm sorry, the cabins was after a community called Keddie. Her last name is Sharp.
That's what the Keddie murders mean, the location that they happened.
That's right. So Sue rented a Keddie cabin, number 28, which the numbers are relevant here, in the fall of 1981. So a couple of years after she had left. She had resided there with her 15-year-old son, John, 14-year-old daughter, Sheila, 12-year-old daughter, Tina, and 2 younger sons, Rick, age 10, and Greg, age 5. So single mom with all these kids. That's rough.
That's tough.
Especially in the 70s. So she was trying to better her situation and took up a typing class with financial aid that was awarded to her. And according to folks in her community, she was relatively quiet. She kept to herself, but the family apparently was very friendly. They integrated well, but they were just a little bit more reserved. And the children were also attending school at Quincy, and they were making friends. So it didn't seem like there was anything, particularly odd about this family.
Sure.
They're just, busy single mom, lots of kids, and probably coming and going and not having a lot of time to really socialize with
too much to think about to do anything else.
Too much to think about, right? From the front door, so I'll describe a little bit what it look like inside. So from the front door, their small wooden cabin, it opened into a living room. Beyond the living room was the kitchen and 2 bedrooms. So the girls shared one and the younger boy shared the other. The oldest boy, John, got the ground floor basement all to himself. And from the ground level in the back of the house, a flight of stairs led up to the main living area.
Gotcha.
So on April 11th, 1981, at around 11:30 a.m., Sue, Sheila, and Greg drove from the residence of their friends, the Meeks family, to retrieve Rick, who was attending baseball tryouts at Ganser Field in Quincy. So this is 11:30 in the morning. So they happen upon John and his friend Dana Hall Wingate hitchhiking at the mouth of the canyon from Quincy to Keddie, and then drove them about 6 miles away to Keddie. So just kind of orienting people to what's going on throughout this day. 2 hours later, around 3:30 p.m., John and Dana hitchhiked back to Quincy, where they may have had plans to visit friends. So around this time, the boys were seen in the city's downtown area. That's all we know. So that same evening, Sheila had plans to spend the night with the Seabolt family, who lived in, I think it was cabin number 27, which was an adjacent unit. So while Sue, the mother, remained at home with Rick, Greg, and the boys' young friend, Justin Smart, when that name is important. So Sue's at home with the younger boys. The other kids are out. Sheila, the daughter, is next door at the Seabolt family. So Sheila leaves the house shortly after 8 o'clock at night to sleep at the Seabolts. And so Tina, the other daughter who had been watching television at the Seabolt residence, actually comes home after asking what time it was. She realized it was late. She goes home. So they kind of did this switch. So all that's really relevant here is that the kids are kind of going back and forth. It's that culture of like, I'm going to the neighbors. I'll see you later. And,
yeah, of course. 70s.
So 70s. And then the other kids are out hitchhiking and doing weird shit.
Oh, yeah.
So at approximately 8 a.m. the next morning, so on the morning of April 12th, Sheila returns home and discovers the dead bodies of her mom, John, and Dana in the house's living room.
Oh, my God.
All three had been bound with medical tape and electrical cords. Tina was absent from the home. She was not there.
Okay.
She was the one that had come home later that night. So while the three younger children, Rick, Greg, and then Justin Smart, the friend, were found physically unharmed in an adjacent bedroom. Okay.
So tied up but not harmed?
Nope. They were just like
sitting there.
They had slept through it, or they had,
see.
They just they woke up that next morning and also, when they heard her come home, realized like, oh, there's, three dead people in the house.
Yeah. Okay.
So initial reports stated that the three young boys had slept through the incident. Although later this was actually contradicted, that wasn't true. So the murders of Sue, John, and Dana were especially vicious. So there were 2 bloody knives and 1 hammer found at the scene. And one of the knives, a steak knife, later determined to have been used in the murders, had been bent at roughly 30 degrees.
Whoa.
So really violent.
Hit a bone and couldn't get through. Oh, my God. And also I'm just struck by like those were murder weapons that were just dropped there.
Yeah.
Either completely out of their mind or just careless or just violent and passionate, like just not thinking, like disorganized, right?
That's right. Yeah, it was just like, okay, so you kill 3 people and you leave all this stuff there.
Yeah.
So, and remember, this is 1979. There's no DNA at this point,
right,
that they're using. I mean, there's DNA, but they're not using it.
Understood.
So blood spatter evidence from inside the house indicated that the murders had all taken place in the living room. Just that, and which makes sense maybe why, they're not using guns and things. So these kids apparently didn't hear what was going on in the other room.
I guess not.
As far as we know. So Sue was discovered lying on her side near
no screaming. I don't know.
I mean,
okay.
I don't know. Like if someone gets stabbed, if maybe the other 2 were sleeping and then it was all, I don't know.
We're not sure, but it's interesting, right? To think about.
How do people stay so quiet? Especially because you're sharing walls too. It's cabin.
Duct tape, I guess. But like your cabins, especially in the 70s, I can tell you, not a lot of privacy.
I'll mention something regarding that in a
sure.
moment. So Sue was discovered lying on her side near the living room sofa, nude from the waist down and gagged with a blue bandana and her own underwear, which had been secured with tape. Although that makes the explanation for one person being silent. You can't gag 3 people at once. She had been stabbed in the chest and her throat was stabbed horizontally, the wound passing through her larynx, super painful, nicking her spine, and on the side of her head was an imprint matching the butt of a Daisy 880 Powerline BB pellet rifle.
My goodness.
So violent. So John's throat, the son, was slashed. Dana had multiple head injuries and had been manually strangled to death. John and Dana suffered blunt force trauma to their heads caused by 1 or more hammers. Autopsies determined that Sue and John died from the knife wounds and blunt force trauma, and Dana died by asphyxiation. I mean, this is someone who was on a fucking mission.
It's awful.
Yeah. After Sheila sees this gruesome scene, she runs back to the Seabolts next door to get help. And while the Seabolts tried to calm her down, their teenage son, Jamie Seabolt, goes over to cabin 28, to Sue's house, to see if anyone's still alive. So the 3 boys in the house, Rick, Greg, and their friend Justin, are all safe in the bedroom. They were still asleep and seemingly unaware of what had happened. Jamie ushered them out of the house through the bedroom window to protect them from the horrifying crime scene. So that was one of the first smart things done here.
Yeah.
So given the extent of the brutality of the Keddie cabin murders, there was plenty of evidence left behind. They found a bloody fingerprint on the handrail leading down from the back door. However, the only blood found was on the victims and all over the house, floors, walls, ceiling, etc. But the perpetrators were able to escape without leaving any of their own blood behind. They did seem to have some DNA on a piece of tape that they had used to cover a mouth, but this is like before any of that was really sophisticated. So it was not enough to give them any answer.
So they didn't have like the right tests yet.
Or they didn't have the right tests yet. Yeah. The whole scene is so profoundly messy. And they talk about how there was so much chaos during the search that things were just being dropped and moved and people were able to come in and out. We talked about this during the Amanda Knox too, right? Something similar
Lots of different cases of this issue.
But I remember specifically going like, wow, well, that just botched everything. So a few hours go by before they even realize that Tina, the other daughter, they don't even know where she is.
In all the chaos.
So she's nowhere to be found. So they found bloodstains on her bed leading to the belief that she was kidnapped from her bed. Mm-hmm. So due to the chaos, it takes a few hours before anyone realizes she's gone. And many, many hours pass since her disappearance. So the chance of anyone finding her at this point or finding her nearby now is pretty slim. So do we have any witnesses? So we talked about, whether there were noises or anything like that, or did anybody see anything?
Sure.
So the neighbors near the cabin where it took place in 28 reported that they heard muffled screams or groans that woke them up between 1 and 2 a.m., but they couldn't determine where the sounds came from and went back to sleep. So it was probably just enough to disturb them, but to not make out.
And there's nothing there, and so you just go, I must have dreamt it or something.
Well, any of us who have lived in apartments, townhomes where we share walls, we hear weird shit.
Yeah, and you don't do something about every weird thing you hear.
No, because a lot of times what you hear is like, I don't know if that sounded weird, but you're not sitting there going, that's probably a murder.
Yeah, no, of course not. Our minds don't immediately go to that.
They don't. And if they do, well,
you've been watching too much true crime.
Yeah. So the coroner and the police findings. So it's evident that Sue had put up a fight during the attack. She had defensive wounds on her arms. Oddly, John and Dana did not have any defensive wounds or blood under their bindings. And I would imagine that's because they were asphyxiated and John's throat was slashed. So it's like, what are you going to fight? You're done right away.
No, yeah.
She was probably sexually assaulted and had, other things going on before they used the hammer or whatever it was that killed her. So it appears that they didn't have even a chance to fight back. So all of their injuries happened after the killers had tied them up. So we have some suspects and findings here. So upon discovering the scene, Sheila rushes back to the Seabolts, like I had said, and Jamie Seabolt retrieves Rick, Greg, and Justin through the bedroom window. He later admits to having briefly entered the home through the back door to see if anyone was still alive, potentially contaminating evidence in the process. So here's the first knowledge of, okay, it wasn't a pure scene, right? So was he involved? Now we don't know.
Now it's just suspicious.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, no, I forgot.
Oh yeah, I ruined it.
Just
Whoops.
Walked through the back door and okay.
Yeah, sure.
So now a month after the Keddie murders take place, Justin Smart, who's one of the survivors, tells his therapist that he was having dreams about the murder. So, he's starting to seemingly like things are starting to resurface. So in his dream, he had tried to stop the bleeding in Sue's chest with towels, and he covered her with a blanket.
It was a dream.
It was just a dream. So after being placed under hypnosis and stating hearing noises out in the living room and claiming to have seen two men with Sue, describing them in detail, it was believed that the police made suggestions to Justin while under hypnosis, so this testimony wasn't credible.
Oh, boy.
So we know this, too, about hypnosis, that it's one of those things that people are allowed to testify on and they can talk about it, but the weight of the credibility in court is quite low, just because there can be so much room for suggestibility. There's two main suspects in this case. The first one is Marty Smart, Justin's father.
The dad, okay.
So Marty Smart lived with his wife in cabin 26, so just 2 cabins over. Marty was Justin's stepfather, and his wife happened to be in the same typewriting. Actually, Marty and his wife happened to be in the same typewriting class with Sue. So he had a reputation of being a hothead. He, at one point, had allegedly tried running over his son and wife. And during his interrogation, Marty offered to the police that his hammer with the blue handle had gone missing.
Oh, yeah, sure.
I don't know. It's just not in the garage anymore.
Okay.
What?
Okay.
So
we needed to mention that. So
my
random.
first thought here is,
if you don't know anything about the case, it's so random.
I know. My first thought is, was it Justin?
Yeah, sure.
Right? Because he could have taken the hammer, but then his
dream
and his body was clean. There was nothing left on him unless he showered. I don't know. We don't know.
Which is what people do. But
he also told investigators that his stepson, Justin, might have seen something on the night of the murder without the killer detecting the boy. So like Justin was able to, he may have mentioned to me that he saw something.
It's so... Ugh.
So a few years after his interrogation, Marty's wife, Marilyn, said that she had found Tina's bloody jacket in their basement.
What?
Here's where it gets real fucked. And had given it to the police during the earlier investigation, but no one had any record of it.
What? Oh my God.
So this girl is missing. I think they end up finding her body later, like far away. They end up finding her. But her bloody jacket is... Oh yeah.
By the way,
I found her bloody jacket in our basement,
Okay.
and I had given it to the police during the earlier investigation. But then why don't the cops have that?
Oh boy.
So Marty's counselor at the Veterans Administration in Reno tells police that Marty confessed to killing Sue and Tina, but not the two boys.
What?
So according to the story, Marty said that he was angry that Sue had convinced Marilyn to leave him. Remember, they all shared the typewriting class.
Oh, yeah.
On the other hand, his reason for killing Tina was that she had seen everything. As a result, he couldn't allow her to live. So although the counselor initially reported Marty's statements to the police not long after the killings, the police did not log the information as evidence or follow up.
What?
With this information.
Good God.
It's like so many things. So after the interrogation, Marty moves to Reno, dies in Oregon in the year 2000. Like they don't even follow up.
Who the fuck are these idiots? Holy shit.
So then in 2018, one of the detectives matches the DNA from the murder scene to a known living suspect. But since then, no arrests have been made. The names have never been released to the public. And nevertheless, Gamberg, the detective, says that 6 people may have been involved. 2 suspects, Marty and Bo, had died. And of the suspects who are still alive, well, they just don't know.
Okay.
So I just want to recap on the fact that there was apparently all this evidence turned in, and let's go with the fact that 6 people were involved. Is that police corruption? Were there law enforcement involved?
Right? Because, okay, so I'm thinking, yeah, the murder scene absolutely seems like a thing where there would be multiple people involved because there's just so much going on. There's so many weapons. This is not a one person. It doesn't feel like a one person thing. Because there's so many victims and there's blood all over the place and there's all these different injuries, different weapons, different things going on. And then I'm like, well, how do 6 people or 3 people or however many fucking people you want to talk about go into this home and the freaking people in the next room don't hear any of the people and the footsteps?
Well, here's my thought. Here's
what?
Yeah, here's my thought. So I didn't talk much about Bo. Bo was friends with Marty, and
Bo's the dad?
No, Marty is the stepdad, and then his friend Bo.
Oh,
right.
There's just a friend.
So they were 2 suspects, and then you have the son Justin. There's 3 right there.
Yep.
Let's say you add in the dumbass Seabolt friend that was next door. That by the way, I walked through the back of the house. There's 4. Okay.
All right.
Then maybe you have Marty's wife in on it, who apparently gave evidence at some point. There's 5. Right. And then all it takes is 1 cop
to be a part of it.
And there's 6.
And there's
the
6.
1 cop that didn't report.
And where did we get the number 6 from?
So we have
somebody said maybe there was 6 people.
Somebody said 6. So, if we were going to, based on the information we have, it'd be Marty, his wife, his stepson, the neighbor boy, Bo, and maybe
and you'd only really need a couple of them to do the murders and the rest of them are just helping.
Well,
right?
yeah, because you can have the cop who maybe there is all this information that was turned in and, oh, I don't know, somehow it got destroyed.
Yeah.
This is a crime of passion. Mm-hmm. It's so violent. This isn't someone who was going in to steal something or, I mean, this was a revenge of some kind, or they were wanting someone to stay quiet or something.
Well, and so the only motive that's been asserted is that Marty had some issue with like an affair or something. That's the only
No, Marty had some issue with the fact that Marty, his wife, and Sue were all in a typewriting class together, and I guess he had found out that Sue was telling her to leave Marty.
Oh,
and so he was pissed off about that. And we have information knowing, not that this means that he would murder somebody, but that he did have he was a hothead. And there was one report that he tried running his stepson and wife over with his car once. This is a guy who clearly had, impulse control,
anger issues, impulse control, and would act it out. In other words, he would get mad and then do something, which is different from just like getting mad and yelling and being a general jackass.
So it's like, it looks like they spared, the two boys. And then if the Seabolts, and not the Seabolts, if the Smarts were involved, then it makes sense why their son wasn't touched. If Tina did see something, it would make sense why she was gone. Why someone would want to come in and take out an entire family, I don't know.
That's another interesting thing too, like why they left who they left, right? Like it was what you're saying, like Justin was still alive. It's like why they didn't kill the people they didn't kill. They only killed. And also, if you've got some issue with the wife, why kill everybody else? Like it takes a certain kind of psycho to kill.
Maybe because they were in the same room with her and they didn't. I think they
just
were
fucked it up.
I think that just, because they're saying Tina died as well because she saw everything. And then the other two kids died because they were in the same room. But we also can't rule out the husband, James, too.
Right.
So I don't know. It's a really, really bizarre. And again, I've said this in some of the other cases we've looked at. 1970s, 1980s, 1990s. We don't have Ring cameras. We don't have Nest cameras. We don't have GPS locations. We don't have text messages. We don't have any of that. We have now. It was so much easier, and it's a cabin, so it's probably somewhat remote, small town, and everyone knows each other, including law enforcement and civilians. There's a lot of incestuous, over those relationships blend. It's like when you watch horror movies and when the cop pulls someone over and they know him, that those stereotypes come from reality.
Yeah, and this is 1981, so
yep, yeah,
a lot of. So with the cops bumbling it all too, they had evidence of the jacket. They had Marty confessed
to his therapist at the Veterans Center,
and then dies, of course, a couple decades later. But also, Marty's not implying any of these other 5 people that were involved. He just talks about his own thing.
He says that he killed Sue and Tina, but not the 2 boys.
But then there's no discussion of who did kill the 2 boys.
No, it just says his reason for killing Tina was that she had seen everything.
And then the therapist brings this to the cops.
Then the therapist, and then it says that the police did not log the information as evidence or follow up with this information. So that's where I go.
That's why you're like, what? There's got to be somebody that's in on it, kind of thing.
For sure.
Oh my God,
the whole thing is a mess.
That's so ridiculous. Yeah. Now I know a lot of documentaries and different things have been made about these murders, but I've not seen any of them. So I'm coming in cold to this as far as.
Me too. This is all I know is from doing just the research for this episode. And I couldn't find anything that even alluded to, years have gone by and now we know this, this, and this. It's like, well, they destroyed so much information that there was no possible way. There were no arrests ever made. No names. Also, no names were ever released to the public. It just seems like
a cover up.
Yes. It seems like a cover up.
And then it's like, well, nobody was figuring out what the motive for the cover up was. It wasn't about some fucking guy and his, you're convincing my wife to leave.
So I'm just going to take out a whole family.
That doesn't jive either. I just think the real reasons are buried.
Oh, sure.
But it is interesting because it's one of those big unsolved cases where, like I said, like the docs and stuff have been made about it. But when I just did a quick Google search, all the articles are sort of like, why the case was bungled, why it still remains unsolved, and why the small town police are vilified over this, of course. And
there had to have been multiple people involved, though, to pull off something this large.
Just the freaking murder says multiple people, but yeah, then to pull off this and have it buried. And when you have a confession and blood evidence.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the counselor's going, hello, like he's telling me.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
And literally being able to get away with murder like that.
How frustrating that would be. And then what? You're going to keep seeing that guy in your practice?
And it's like they interrogated him. They didn't log anything. He moves. Then he just moves to Reno.
Yeah.
Then he moves to Oregon and then he dies.
Yeah. Okay. Bye. Bye. Thanks. I murdered. Bye. Like what?
I murdered a lot.
Okay. Bye.
Oh my God.
Fuck. Okay. Well, thanks, Kathy.
You're welcome.
Awful. Now I want to watch some of these docs and stuff and see some other theories. Like what? I gotta know what.
I'm sure if I did a really deep dive on this, I may find other motives. But there's regardless of that, they just botched everything.
No. That's obvious. That's obvious. And I'm imagining if you do a deep dive, you're just going to find more botchedness. But maybe on one of our shows where we talk about some docs, we do kind of wrap up episodes where we talk about good docs we've seen and stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe I'll check one or two out and see if they're any interesting tidbits about how they botched more of the case, or I like the ones where they talk about all their crazy theories, and so maybe there's some crazy theories.
What I appreciate about the new series I did not find this case on Unsolved Mysteries, although sometimes I will go there, is what I appreciate about the newest season, the newer seasons is it's one case per episode.
Oh, nice.
Where in the old Unsolved Mysteries, you'd get
like 3 or 4.
It'd be like 15, 20 minutes, where now it's a whole 45-minute episode on one crime.
Well, now they see our listening pleasure has shifted, where we aren't as vapid as we used to be as watchers and listeners, because it used to be that we just wanted kind of quick bits and pieces, but because true crime has become so much a part of our culture now, 5, 10 episodes, whole movies, documentaries, multiple documentaries, all the things, that's really smart, because they've just realized that audiences want more depth. Like they've heard it all. In other words, when Unsolved Mysteries started, it was really unique and interesting. We didn't hear about all those true crime things then. Now we hear about them all.
Yeah.
And so they need to do more, which is smart. Well, thank you so much for that, Kathy.
You're so welcome.
We bring these to the show. We hope you enjoy it. If you have an unsolved case you'd like us to shoot the shit about, let us know. We will do it. Thank you so much for listening. This has been an episode of Terror Talk. My name is Shannon.
And I'm Kathy. Sleep safe, everyone.